Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Kim. I make videos on eating disorder recovery, body positivity, my experience, all that jazz, and it really helps me in my eating disorder recovery to be able to understand like why my eating disorder manifests, how it was trying to help me, how it actually doesn't help me, and how I can engage with that knowledge to help me recover. And one thing that helps me understand my eating disorder more is if I can compare it to things and like make metaphors and analogies. So that's what I'm gonna do today. The other day, my husband and my kids watched the movie Click with Adam Sandler in it. And if you haven't seen this movie, I'm gonna tell you about it. But I was really shocked at how similar that movie was to my eating disorder. So in the movie, Adam Sandler gets this remote control that allows him to control his whole world. That's why it's called Click, because it's a remote control. And when he gets the remote control, he's told to be careful with the way he uses it because the remote control is smart and it will learn his preferences and then it will start working by itself. But Adam Sandler doesn't really take that into consideration. And then he learns that he can fast forward with the remote control through parts of his life. So he can fast forward through things that make him uncomfortable, like conversations with people, even being intimate with his wife. He can fast forward to getting things he wants, like fast forwarding through some of the work he needs to get promotions. And so eventually, and at first when this is happening, he's like ecstatic. He's like, I have found the secret to life. Like, this is great. No one else knows what I'm doing, but I can like fast forward through these chunks of my life that are making me feel uncomfortable. And he really likes that for a long time. It's working for him. But then over time, the remote learns that he wants to skip these certain parts of his life. So it starts skipping ahead and ahead and ahead and ahead through these big chunks of his life. And then he gets to the end of his life and he's this old man and he's heartbroken because he looks back and he sees how much of his life he's missed because the remote had learned his preferences and it had become this automatic habit and he had missed out on so much life and he's just so sad. And then there's a twist, I'm going to tell it, so hopefully this doesn't spoil the movie for you. But then it ends up all kind of being a dream. And then he wakes up and it takes him back to the day of getting the remote. And then he gets the remote and he's like, do I want to use the remote? And he decides, no, he doesn't want to use the remote, even though it makes some parts of his life easier, that he ultimately doesn't want to miss so much of his life. So he throws the remote away. So how is this like our eating disorder? I know when I found my eating disorder, I knew, like I heard, like I had health class or whatever, and they said that eating disorders are a disease and they're really bad and you wouldn't want to get it. Like I had that warning like Adam Sandler, but I engaged in my eating disorder anyways. And at first, for a while, for like 5 years, 6 years, I thought it was wonderful. I was like, I have the secret to life. I can eat whatever I want. I can compensate for it. I can get skinny. I can like numb out of emotions that I don't want to be feeling. I can like purge emotions away. I can control the shape of my body. This is awesome. But what I didn't realize was that every time I was using my remote, my eating disorder, every time I was choosing to click my eating disorder, I was creating a habitual pattern in my brain. I was creating a neural pathway in my brain that made me programmed to do that. So for like 5 years, I really enjoyed it, maybe even 7 years, probably 7 years. And then 8 years ago, I was like, I don't want to be doing this anymore. I'm missing so much of my life. Like this doesn't feel like a choice to me. Like in the movie for Adam Sandler, it wasn't like he was choosing anymore to fast forward through things. The remote would just fast forward automatically. And he'd be like, no, I didn't want to do that. And that's kind of how my eating disorder felt. I didn't want to be doing it, but like a stressor would happen or I would overeat or whatever it was. And the next thing I knew, it was like, oh my gosh, you're doing it again. Like, how can I stop doing this? And it's that neural pathway. And I've talked about neural pathways in previous videos, but a neural pathway is the way the brain thinks. And when you do a certain action or you have a certain thought pattern, that pathway becomes deeper. It's like walking through a field of hay. And if there's been one path that's been walked through, or any kind of trail, walked over and over again, that trail gets established and like you can see the trail and it's really easy to walk on it. And then if you're not making these other pathway connections as frequently to walk on that trail, it's like weed whacking, right? Like you have to like peel away the weeds and you can't walk as fast and it's hard and you feel like you're getting lost because that pathway hasn't been developed. So that's like that habit. It's like, oh, well, I'll just go this way. It's like driving to a friend's house that you've done 1,000 times. You can drive there without even thinking. It's like you've just repeated the action so much. But that's that eating disorder. Eventually it becomes not even a choice, or it feels like it's not a choice because it's just the brain's automatic response to life or to overeating or to stressors or whatever it is. And then years go by, or however long goes by, and you realize like, how much of my life have I wasted? So I've been trying to recover for 8 years on and off. And what really helped me this last time is I found a journal I wrote at the beginning of my eating disorder, and I realized like this shit has been going on for 15 years. And I was like, just like Adam Sandler, I was heartbroken. It's like, I can't believe how many friendships I've lost, how many moments I've lost, how many like vacations I've gone on, but instead of being on the vacation, I was just obsessing about my weight. Like just how much of life I have missed because I had developed this pattern in my brain that like skipped forward life, and it skipped forward by me not being present. I might physically be there, but in my head, it's just eating disorder. And it's a really sad way to live. And just like Adam Sandler, you can't just throw away the remote. He tries to throw it away, but he can't. It's like, it's this ingrained part of you. You have to relearn to not use it. And for me, so for now when I choose not to engage, because for a while it was like, okay, well, this is a choice. I can choose to stop clicking through my life with my eating disorder. I can choose to stop just skipping forward and numbing out and going to my eating disorder. And the more I did it, the more I wanted my eating disorder. Like there was times when I wished that I could run away to a hotel and just be holed up with my eating disorder, and that I would like that more than living my life with my kids and watching them grow up. And it's like, how sick is that? But that's the eating disorder part of my brain I had just done so many times. So at first when I wanted to choose not to use my eating disorder, it was really hard because that neural pathway had been formed so many times. And I didn't realize how not eating enough food made it so hard to choose to recover. Because then not only do I have the neural pathway that I've done so many times in my brain, but when you don't eat enough food, then your animal brain, not like your more advanced human brain, but your animal brain is driving you to eat. So not only do you have this habit that's been engraved, you have this like brain force that's making you think about food all the time until you eat. So what was really helpful for me was making sure I wasn't restricting at all. I couldn't mentally restrict, meaning like I want a brownie, but instead I'm going to eat this kale salad because that's restricting that brownie. Or mentally restricting, being like, I'm going to eat this brownie, but I'm already going to calculate in my head how I'm going to compensate for it tomorrow by exercising, or how I'm going to compensate for it by under eating. That's still restricting, or just not eating enough calories. So once I was starting to eat enough calories, it really helped at least turn off that bottom part of my brain from driving me to eat. And then all I had to deal with was the neurotransmitter. And it was just choosing, like being like, okay, this is normally a time period, or this is normally a situation that I would use my eating engagement for. That's that neural pathway. I've walked that trail so many times, and instead I'm going to be super uncomfortable. I'm going to feel that I'm uncomfortable, and I'm going to bushwhack this new trail. And I'm almost to 100 days this round of not binging or purging or restricting or over exercising, which is so huge for me. And what's cool is the more days I get, the more practice I get at walking those other trails. And now this trail is getting so much more established than my eating disorder trail. And the other day I even had this thought like, oh, we have cookie dough. I could make cookies and then throw up. And it was like, could I even throw up? Like it's been so long, like I'm forgetting that. And it's just really cool. And it's fun to watch those kind of family movies, but instead of just watching them for the base level, kind of seeing that deeper theme through it and how it relates to my life, and to just see how much my eating disorder has tried to help me. Like in the beginning, I established it because I thought it helped me get through life, but then there came a point where it didn't. I keep rambling on, but I always compare it to doing cocaine. So if you haven't done drugs, I'm sober. Now I've been sober for almost 7 years, but I used to do coke. My drug use and my eating disorder really lay hand in hand. So when I found coke, I thought it was the answer to all things because it helped me not eat. It's not worth it. Don't do it. But I remember telling someone, they're like, you're really addicted to coke. And I was like, I could stop anytime I want. I just don't want to. And then there came to be the point where I was like, okay, I want to stop. And I realized I couldn't. So all that time I was doing it and loving and thinking I was in control, I really wasn't. And I didn't realize that until I chose not to do it, but I couldn't stop. And it was the same thing with my eating disorder. I kept thinking like, I don't want to do this forever, Kim, but right now it's really working for me. But I'll stop eventually. I so am the one controlling this eating disorder. And then there came the time when it was like, I want to stop doing this, but I can't. And it was just like Adam Sandler. There came a point when he wanted to stop using the remote control, but he couldn't. So I hope this helps give you a little bit of insight. Maybe you can relate a little bit. And you always have that option to choose a different pathway, but it can be really helpful to realize that that pathway is ingrained and it's going to be work. It's going to be uncomfortable. Trail breaking is uncomfortable, but the more you do it, eventually you establish a great trail. If you have any questions or comments or any other movies that you relate to your eating disorder with, I would love to hear that. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye.